simplest and most pure expression. He had been using a lot of these multiple figures, and so these figures then are just, they are allowing you to see the impact more clearly. The other ones, the impact is diffused, I would suggest. Yeah. Again, with this corner, you get a sense of the stylistic diversity. These, I think, are quite wonderful paintings, non-representational paintings. One from the State collection and one from a private collection. But I'm showing you these against two figures or two paintings of individuals here. I want to point to her, this dressing girl, 1963-64. He was really interested in subjects that allowed him to explore the demi-monde, or the sort of the world of the night world in some respects, cafes to some extent, and these powerful figures of women and then of Western subjects at the same time. So really, these subjects start taking him into almost an epic approach to art. What he started to see then is the stories of the way that we understand the West as an epic experience. So you have a stranger coming into town, you have he's either welcomed or not, he might be met with hostility or met with a welcome, and you start to see things like six guns. You start to see all these figures are kind of walking around a little bit like this. They're looking a little dangerous, And she's not called Ruby, but I'm calling her Ruby at the moment. Ruby's the prize and that sort of thing. So we end up with these figures like this one over here, Barbell. She's called Blue Mother Barbell. And you can see that she really is, sort of almost like an archetype of danger. There's this sense then of what could be possible in this world of posturing. And I think that became really important to him, is the idea that life is about roles and about the way that we fill roles. So almost like, you wake up and, how many of you heard that expression, oh, the suits came over? So we talk about roles and that sort of thing. And that became very much part of his overall interest in the human condition, because he wants us to think about, well, what roles are you called upon to fill, and do you feel that you're your own stereotype? Are we stereotyped by human expectations on us? And like any good artist, whether visual or literary, he worked with the tools at hand. So in this case, living in Calgary, he wanted to work with Western archetypes. He didn't call them Klondike days, but it's a little bit like that. It's these figures who are a little bit dangerous and circumscribed by their own expectations of their own roles. So as we go into the next room, this is the Western room, and I want to see you, these are posses and riders as we go into this next room. I'm pleased that we were able to have a couple of sculptures in the exhibition. He did a lot of sculptural work, but it tended to be more ephemeral than we might like. They were not preserved in one way or another. So we have some documentation from photographs as to what they might have looked like. And here then is a Western rider, and he's actually, he's got a gun. Now, it's quite curious. I talked to him a number of times about guns. What did he mean by guns? Was it about violence? Yes, partly. But it was also, again, as with the Judas paintings, it was about choices. What do we do? Do we threaten? Do we cajole? Do we work with other people? So I think that they're about potential violence, but they're also about the way that we use the tools at hand that we have. And in a sense, a gun, obviously, is an easy answer, isn't it? Supposedly, you take the gun out and you solve the question. Or, whatever the question was, I've got the answer. But with him, there was this sense of ambiguity. So the gun is much more an ambiguous symbol than you might expect. Now, as we scan this space, These are all figures then of riders and of posses. And this became a really powerful archetype for him, particularly in the 1960s and early 70s when he was doing most of these paintings. On the one hand, the rider was a symbol of freedom. And the rider was somebody who was unfettered by fences and was able to go out into the wild as we know it, the beautiful landscape as we know it. But on the other hand, the rider was part of a, I can't remember the term in communist thinking, but it's where everybody thinks the same thing. It's almost like you get on your you get on your chaps and you head out and you are all sort of one engine or one expression of a common will. So it was about uniformity and the way that we're called upon to fill these social roles again. Now, the works that are over here on this wall here are among the most ambiguous and yet most interesting in his oeuvre. And these are fallen riders. And so these works here, they show the consequences of the hubris or pride that one assumes. Here I am, I've got this horse, I know what I'm doing, this is one beautiful horse, I got my gun, got my friends. But just like life has unexpected consequences and unexpected travails, so too do we fall off our high horse, literally. So there's that sense then of the catapulting of presumption, of the people who would presume to control fate. So there's much more of a sense then of fate being something that acts upon us, as indeed in the original Greek sense of it did. The fates took the lives and cut them with their shears. That is how there was no sense of individual volition. So I think that these works here are definitely the darkest and most ambiguous, and yet they do fit exactly with the same consequences and themes that we've been working with so far, which have to do with the individual social roles and the way that they respond to society. We're almost concluding today's tour. I just want to take us into the next room, which is what I'm calling the Buddhist room. She's in there, yeah. Actually, this is my favorite painting in the show. It's owned by local collectors, Dr. John and Mrs. Naomi Lacey, and I've just found this to be just the most lyrical of any in the show. Now, I hope you'll have your own favorites. I talked to Helene about this, and her view is that it's a Western. She's a rider. She's got chaps. I'm not totally convinced of that, but there's this sense if you get close to her, I call her an angel. She's got these three figures and these three profiles, the front view, the two side views there. And to me, there's this sense then of almost the impossible lightness of being, you know, to use that term from Milan Kundera, something like that. A very beautiful work. Now, with these kinds of works, I think he got to the point where he said, I don't need to say anything more. I've said what I need to say. And so he decided to withdraw from making visual art, concentrate on his Buddhist teaching, and he established a teaching center in his home, which he ran for 20 years. And he also did musical compositions on a synthesizer for a number of years, as well as writing poetry. The last works in the show are these Buddhist avatars over here on this far wall. These have never been shown in exhibition before. And these are the most directly, obviously, the most directly Buddhist works of his career. It's inspired by the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it's sort of 5 avatars or teachers of Buddhism, including the central figure of the Enlightened One. So this, I think, got him to the point where he said, this is done in the early 1980s, he said, well, beyond this, I believe I've said what I need to say. And that essentially is where his career